You don't have a ticket? Poor people like you can't possibly understand music. I found myself at a classical concert venue thanks to my father-in-law and mother-in-law, yet my ticket was mysteriously missing. How dare a poor person like you try to be in the same place as us? Go home. I was clearly being discriminated against, but the person who reached out to help me was my mother-in-law. Little did my sister-in-law know, she was about to hit rock bottom. My name is Betty. I fell in love with music at a young age. Being surrounded by the music I love was always a joy, but due to my shy and reserved personality, I never really played with others. I just play alone with toy instruments. We weren't a wealthy family, so taking music lessons was out of the question. In elementary school, I joined the wind ensemble without hesitation, and I stuck with it through high school. But whenever we had to play as a group, I was always the one dragging everyone down. That experience became a sort of trauma, making me uncomfortable in group settings, even outside of music. I found peace when playing an instrument alone. I often played in a corner of the music room. That caught the attention of my music teacher, who introduced me to a known musician. I was told I had a rare talent in music, but because we weren't well off, my parents never really understood or supported it. I always thought that maybe if I could get proper training, I'd be comfortable playing in a group setting. But due to my family's circumstances, that was never an option. I eventually gave up on pursuing music professionally, settling for enjoying it as a hobby. When I received my first paycheck as an adult, I went to my first ever classical concert. I was a big fan of a certain family of musicians who I looked up to and admired. The tickets were expensive, even for the worst seats, but I thought it might be my first and last concert, so I went for it. No regrets. I got a lot more out of it than the price of the ticket, and I was very satisfied. I'd love to go again if I get the chance, but I can't keep buying expensive tickets all the time. I'm contributing some of my salary to my family, and I have to save for a wedding too. As for marriage, I'm just waiting for the day I meet someone who feels right. After working for 3 years, my parents have started hinting that I should start thinking about my future. Back in the day, people usually got married in their late 20s to early 30s. My mom married my dad around that time too. Now, personal choice is highly valued. My parents seem to understand this and don't nag too much. But the lack of pressure makes me feel like I need to hurry up and get married. Even after getting a job, I'm still shy and introverted. I've been invited to group dates by female coworkers, but never really talked to anyone. Just being able to consider going on a group date is growth for me. So I decided to start with online conversations through a dating app. I met a guy who loves music and we hit it off online. After exchanging messages for a while, he asked to meet up and I agreed. When we met, I realized he was one of the members of a famous musical family I'm a huge fan of. People might wonder why I didn't recognize him from his profile picture, but who'd ever think it was actually them? His name was common enough not to suspect it was really him. And if he knew I was a fan, I figured he'd turn me down. I kept it a secret at first, but eventually decided to open up. I told him about my shyness and how I'm uncomfortable in large groups. He said, "I feel the same way." The more we talked, the more we clicked, and we decided to get married. When I told him I was a fan, he said he was honored and his smile was radiant. Things moved smoothly and a date was set to meet his parents. His family members were usually busy touring, but there happened to be one day when they were all home. I nervously entered his house and waited for his parents and his sister-in-law entertained me in the meantime. She said, "As you might know, we're a musical family. If you can't play at least a violin, you're not really part of the family, you know?" I was in trouble. I had never touched a violin in my life, let alone played one. The school's band club didn't have room for violins. That's when her parents stepped in and said if she had musical skills, any instruments would do. But his sister-in-law insisted on the violin. Then he said, "Mom, don't we have a practice violin? Can we borrow it?" And he added, Please give Betty and me some time for a quick lesson." His mother agreed. "Why not? It'll be interesting to see what you can do in about an hour. A string instrument, and a violin at that. I wasn't confident I could make a sound in just an hour." "But trust me, Betty, you'll be fine," he said. I took his word for it and even asked my mother-in-law if she'd lend me her violin. He has a practice room and we spent an hour there. It was my first time with a violin, one-on-one. Honestly, I was terrible, but Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star is a song I know, so imagining it was easy. I focused on putting emotion into my play since my technique was non-existent. "You're doing great, Betty," my mother-in-law said. "Just making a sound on the violin is hard. You've come a long way, especially considering it's your first time. You're giving the music the respect it deserves." He also said, "You moved me," and gave me a big round of applause. The only one who looked unimpressed was my sister-in-law. I guess she thought I'd embarrass myself. She never expected me to actually be liked by her mom. And so, I was accepted into this musical family. I've officially become a married woman. The relationship with my father-in-law and mother-in-law is good, but a problematic hierarchy with my sister-in-law is emerging. She picks on me, makes snide remarks, and harasses me. She's very pushy and always retaliates if I talk back. I don't have the courage to do so, but that seems to irritate her even more. Either way, the harassment increases. When the family was on tour, there were days where sister-in-law didn't perform due to the tour structure. On those days, it was just sister-in-law and me left at home. Although we had a housekeeper, sister-in-law insisted that I should cook. After tasting it, she kept saying it was awful and poorly made. Even when she told me to remake the meal, she'd throw it away right in front of me, saying she didn't want to eat it anymore. She even spills soup intentionally. Acts like stepping on the small of my back or putting her foot on my head also happen. Even during family dinners, I get called to the bathroom. "When will you learn proper table manners? I don't want to share a table with someone like you," she said. My husband, father-in-law, and mother-in-law think I'm getting better, but she says, "I can't believe you can't even manage that." I don't think I'm as ill-mannered as she claims. Still, the sadness and frustration of not being acknowledged make me feel pathetic. After she leaves, I hide and wipe away my tears. Then my husband comes and says, "I was worried when you didn't come back. Wait, why are you crying? Is she giving you a hard time? Don't hold back, tell me everything." What a sweet man. I almost said, "Actually," but I heard the joyful laughter from the family gathering and I didn't want to upset him, just for me. If I could be patient, wouldn't it keep the peace? "No, it's not like that. I get along with her," I said. "But you were crying." "I was just so happy to be married and accepted by everyone. I couldn't help but cry," I said. My husband seemed to ponder briefly but soon agreed. "Yeah, you're right." He then took my hand saying, "Let's continue with dinner," and led me back to the dining table. It looked like we'd finally get some downtime from my father-in-law and mother-in-law. They even suggested going to a classical music concert as part of welcoming me. Listening to various performances and interpretations from different conductors can be enlightening. They asked me which concert I'd like to attend. I recommended one that my father-in-law and mother-in-law had previously enjoyed. We found out that they could possibly get tickets through a connection they had. However, my sister-in-law says she wants to handle the tickets. She claims she has some pull with the people involved. On the day of the event, we arrived at the venue and my sister-in-law heads over to the staff entrance. After a brief chat with the staff, she comes back with something that looks like tickets. One by one, she hands out the tickets to everyone. However, there was no ticket for me. People who are broke wouldn't understand music anyway, right? Excuse me? You and I are in different levels. Know your place. Now go home. You don't belong here. My husband offered to ask if any spare tickets were available. However, I didn't want to worsen my sister-in-law's mood and make things uncomfortable for everyone else. So I decided it was best to leave and started pulling my husband away. "Wait, Betty, you're not the one who needs to leave. It's her who's always mistreating you." Mother-in-law, who had been silent, pointed at sister-in-law. "Why me? Listening to music has nothing to do with being rich or poor. People have their own ways to enjoy it. It's not for others to interfere." Mother-in-law scolded sister-in-law, who had always been cold to me. "You think I don't know? It's obvious something's been going on behind my back." "That's not true." "Really, I find your envious heart far more impoverished." Then my brother-in-law chimed in. "Aren't you always sleeping through concerts? It seems you're oblivious, but it's glaringly obvious." Brother-in-law chuckled. Sure, sister-in-law graduated from a music conservatory and has some awards, but she became complacent and stopped improving. You have to practice your instrument every day, otherwise your skills deteriorate. "If you're going to talk about what music is, then you should first strive to be better yourself," said brother-in-law. Brother-in-law regretted that he couldn't be straightforward with his wife about her lacking skills and attitude as a musician, but doing blatant harm to his brother's wife was something he couldn't stomach. "You have neither awareness nor ambition as a musician. I think it's time for you to leave our family. I'm tired of supporting someone who shows no promise of growing." There was a good opportunity to say it. "You're one to talk, old lady. Your music sense is so outdated. I can't even listen to it. It's the sound of someone who caters to the poor, so of course I'd be thrilled to leave this awful musical family." Sister-in-law's strong words continued. She declared she would go solo, make a fortune, and show everyone. I thought people like her were incapable of self-reflection, but I didn't expect this level of rage. In the end, she stormed off, throwing a concert ticket on the ground. Mother-in-law picked it up and handed it to me. "Let's go." She took my hand and we started walking. My second experience with a classical concert was truly moving. Different musicians and conductors bring a unique vibe and structure to the same piece. I wondered why the same piece could sound so different. I discovered new interpretations and learned so much. My mother-in-law seemed to notice my enthusiasm. After, the tension between my brother-in-law and sister-in-law reached a boiling point. Attempts to compromise and start anew failed, leading to their eventual divorce. My former sister-in-law hastily organized her solo concert. Ignoring advice, she overconfidently rented a venue that holds 5,000 people. Even popular classical concerts rarely fill such large spaces. Unsurprisingly, tickets didn't sell, and she ended up buying many herself to make the hall look less empty. Merchandise sat unsold, leaving her with an overstocked warehouse. Her second solo concert was equally dismal, attracting only a handful of attendees. Lacking both talent and a likable personality, she was unpopular. Online criticism abounded. Unable to pay her staff or cover other costs, she quickly sank into debt. Attempts at street performances were met with comments like, "You're terrible, stop annoying us," and even resulted in water being thrown at her. On my end, my mother-in-law suggested that I should get professional music training, given my apparent talent. I was both surprised and delighted by the suggestion, though I felt it was a little late to start learning an instrument. But it felt like an opportunity I had given up on was presenting itself again, and I couldn't believe it. I was told the choice of instrument was up to me. I'm considering the violin, especially since my husband has been helping me with it. My mother-in-law found a top-notch instructor who has nurtured many skilled violinists. I even began accompanying the family on their concert tours and helping out behind the scenes. Every day feels blissful as I spend more time with music and feel myself improving. My current dream? To perform a solo accompanied by my husband on the piano.